Good day, good people. It's your guy Lewis to the T, and I'm back with your 23rd installment of Black History Month 2021. Today is Tuesday, February 23rd, and I'm excited today to talk to you guys about the mindset of a king. As my shirt says, long live the king. Long live a king's mindset. I know oftentimes when people think about a king, they think about authority and rulers and they think about power, but also I want us to think about, wise counsel and leadership and the idea of being responsible for your subjects, considering them, being accountable to them. That's also part of being a king. And as I was thinking about that concept, I thought about two men, two kings that came into my life almost by happenstance. I know everything happens for a reason, but these were two events that were not planned. I didn't necessarily get to talk to them one-on-one, but what I learned in their presence and the impact that it has lasted me my whole life. And I met them 20 years apart, right? Exactly 20 years apart. And I only know that because when I went to look for the video of my meeting with John Rogers of Ariel Investments, John Rogers founded Ariel Investments in 1983. And it was the first investment fund company that was held and founded and run by a black man. So that was an amazing accomplishment in and of itself. But John Rogers of Ariel Investments just so happened to be in his office when me and a group of men from the Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church in Chicago took some of our students to Ariel to meet with someone who worked there who was definitely not John Rogers, but an amazing individual in her own right. But we were going to just have her talk to the kids about financial literacy and investments and things of that nature at the level that they were at, right? While we were there, he just so happened to be in the building, saw us as we were walking through the hall, and volunteered to come and sit and talk to these students. So I want you to really take that in, that John Rogers, and I want you to look up the information. I'll put some links down below. This isn't a person who has a lot of time. This is a person who's running an organization, and this is a weekend. This is a Saturday morning experience where he just so happens to be in the office, stops what he's doing, and takes the time to sit and talk to these young men that we brought to him or brought to his organization just to hear some things about financial literacy. And it turns into this amazing mentorship session, this amazing exchange of ideas, and everybody in the room is just sitting in awe. Sitting in awe, including those of us who are adults, those of us who are working in corporate America, working in finance. We're in our, anywhere from our 20s to our 40s at this time, and we're bringing these kids to learn about financial literacy, and we sit there and get this master class on not necessarily just investments, but what's required in order to be successful. He goes into the logic behind success, the discipline and the patience and the dedication required. And I'm sitting there, and as we're taking all of this in, I couldn't help but to think, he doesn't have to do this. Like, why is he taking the time to do this? He could have come in, he could have said who he was, he could have said hello and left, and we would have thought that that was amazing. But he sat down at the table, invited them into his boardroom, had them sit around the table to listen to him. And this is probably the quietest I had ever heard this group, or not heard this group. This was the most attentive they had ever been, and he was able to use metaphors of basketball and just life being in Chicago, and to combine that with the idea and the concept of financial literacy. What I really found that day was just the power of leadership, what it looked like when a black man sat down before black boys to talk about something interesting, to really offer himself up as a person who has something to say, and to completely draw them in and to capture their attention. And they ask questions, and I hope you can get the feeling that I'm trying to convey, that this was not normal, that they would be so interested, not only in the subject matter, but quietly listening and taking in what he had to say and engaging with him. So I have to shout out John Rogers. As he was teaching those young men, he was absolutely teaching me my mindset about not just finances, but about being disciplined, being organized, being patient. He talked a lot about being a young basketball player and his coach teaching him patience. that when he got a little bit older, I mean, maybe his late 20s or 30s, they would play these 3-on-3 pickup games in Chicago's Grand Park, and his team would win because they were so patient. They wouldn't hurry themselves along and make bad shots, but they would be patient and disciplined and beat out teams who he would say had more skill and should have been better. So that's the first person I want to talk about. The second person I want to talk about, the second king I want to talk about, is the Reverend Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. Dr. Dyson I met in 1993. I was a freshman on the campus of Northwest Missouri State University, and as time would have it, you know, back then it was called the Big Eight. Now I think it's the Big 12, if it's still in existence. But for football purposes, there was a conference, it was the Big Eight conference, and it was schools from Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, and Oklahoma, and they would come together in their conference to play each other in regard to football. Well, within that region, within that body of schools, most of those universities were predominantly white institutions, and so what we would do as black students is, before I got there, it was created and it was called the Big Eight Conference on Black Student Government. So the leadership, some of the members of all of these BSUs, Black Student Unions, or ABCs, Alliance of Black Collegians, we would come together on one of the campuses to learn from each other, have seminars, have conferences. How do we retain, attract talent? How do we get more black students there? How do we organize while we're there? How do we fight through the racial injustices that we're facing on campus? And just all sorts of topics and subjects that we would go through over the course of a weekend. It was voluntary. We had to pay to be there. We had to drive oftentimes to be there. And on this particular occasion, we were at the University of Missouri, Columbia, and I walk into this classroom, and there was a seminar, and I don't even remember the name of the seminar. All I know is that I got there maybe 2 minutes before it started, and as soon as I sat down, this gentleman gets up and he introduces himself. Someone introduces him. He gets up, he said, "Yeah, I'm Dr. Dyson," and he begins to speak, and the entire room gets quiet. We were talking, we were chatting, we were kind of going back and forth, and his voice just commanded the attention of the room, and we knew instantly that we were about to learn something. When he started speaking, you could hear a pin drop, and everybody just drew into his voice and what he was saying. And I remember him talking about a conversation that he was having with his son about literature, and his son talking to him about rap music. And I think after that, he ended up writing the book Between God and Gangster Rap. I don't even think that was out yet. That's just how long this was, but he was kind of giving us this lesson about literature and understanding who Shakespeare was and understanding who some of the greats were, but also being able to be a balanced human being. And you should know, the writings of these people from 100 years ago and not understand rap music. How do you do that? And now he's known for kind of randomly spitting out bars and music and rap verses from like some of the hottest hits. But at that time, like, it was mind blowing. We hadn't seen this before. A person his age, and I'm pretty sure I'm older now than he was then. Rapping and also talking as an intellectual and also teaching us and also, being an author. And so we were just, we were fans, you know what I'm saying? We were fans, we were drawn in, we were like, man, this guy is great. But what I remember left feeling was, I have to do better. I have to do better. Like, I'm sitting here and I'm drawn into his vocabulary, I'm drawn into his tone. I'm looking at everything he's doing and how he's doing it because he captured this entire room. And so I wanted to make sure that Black History Note for today was about Long Live the King. And when I say Long Live the King, I'm talking about the way that you make people feel when you enter a room and what you leave them with when you're no longer there. These two men impacted my life. One, it was like 8 years ago, and the other, it was way longer than that, maybe 28 years ago. But I never forgot their words. I never forgot their impact. When I see them now doing interviews, when I read, one of Dr. Dyson's books, when I see an interview with John Rogers, I always think about that very personable touch they had in their intentionality for mentorship and for growth when no one was looking. These weren't opportunities where there was cameras. There was no social media. There was social media with Mr. Rogers, but that we weren't filming or anything. We had maybe some short clips for ourselves, but this wasn't something that they were doing for publicity. It wasn't going to bring them money. It was probably costing them more than they were making. Dr. Dyson may have gotten a fee from the Black Student Union, but I'm sure it was nothing compared to what his speaking fee would normally be or what he would make from writing a book. So it's just important that we remember why we are where we are. As a king, it's not just about authority, power, and rule. It's about being able to stand and give wise counsel and sit at the feet of wise counsel. It's being able to be a mentor and somebody who's able to share themselves. So I hope you guys get something from that. I'm going to drop a couple links below. You're going to see this on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'm your guy, Lewis to the T, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.